E mihi ana kia o te katoa, mo rena toto, haere mai o te tara o te ika. We'll do a short karakia. Ko hauraki e te nao e tau nei, he mihi ana ki te whenua. E tangi ana ki te tangata, ko ngā hao e pūpuhi mai nei. Rere ki uta, rere ki tai. Tihe Māori ora. Here is Hauraki acknowledging the land, lamenting those who have passed, winds here swell to the lands, to the tides, a breath of life. And just before we sit down, I'd just like to acknowledge the challenges that people of Wellington are facing this morning. It's terrible news. And I know Mayor Tory Whanau. I met her a couple of times, and I feel for the people of Wellington and what's going on. So acknowledge that. Thank you, everyone. So we've got a lot to get through today. So it's a big agenda. We'll make a start and we'll move through as efficiently as we can. Do we have any apologies? None. I'm going to move on a second.
I'll move.
Sorry.
Oh.
We're going to go straight to public forum and then move through that. So who's first?
As for the chair, we do have a few great, but I don't have to find it, so we can take.
We'll come back to you. So, Gilbert James, welcome. Yeah. So just to remind you, Gilbert, or I think 5 minutes, and then we'll ask councillors if they have any questions for you for clarification. And all yours.
In copies. Hello everybody, I'm Gilbert James. Thank you for the opportunity. This Marine Farmers Association wrote a letter regarding the corner for Windy Point on Sugarloaf. And so I'm just here to support that letter and make sure it has sunk in. 40 years ago, this would have been on the list of one of the worst little roads in New Zealand. My forebears that were there more than 100 years ago would think it's a highway now. And so really thank you, TCDC, for turning it into a Tarsfield highway. And really good work has been done on the photos. You can see on photo 3, that's really going on the western side, facing the westerly winds. And you'll see that it's crumbling, so it's very and it's come back onto the tar ceiling itself. When we first started with the road, it was now very narrow, and the trucks now, the big trucks coming westward, swing out, and they take up most of the road on the outside. They can't get around the tight corner without swinging halfway across the pathway. But I must thank you for the good work you did on the eastern side, because it eroded away and fell away. And it was a really big job on that. Widen it, better it, and build us a new set of steps that are very robust now. So for us, this is the other side, and my worry is that it's not a big job to fix now at all. But if we get a really stiff howling westerly gale at the top of the tide, that'll cut in at least half a metre into the road and I'm worried that the truck might drop, one wheel into it, and 48-ton truck with a wheel, over the edge there actually would be probably as expensive to get out. I'm not sure how to get it out. Then the whole job would cost if it's done fairly properly. The other photos, we look again on the eastern side, further closer to the point where, as I said, it was widened, and there's a dinghy there on the just above the high water mark, and if we got spare money at some time, it'd be really good to improve that side too. The dinghies bounce up and down the tide of there, but they've got a limited life because we wreck the bottom of the dinghies with the pounding they get. So it's all in all for what you might call a modern industry. We are still clambering down that bank there, and the dinghies are being backed around with the tide. And the point really has been not satisfactory really for 30 years. Really just bringing to attention that if you can lift it right up the list and get the job done, it might save a lot of money and save the mussel farmers quite a bit of money as well if we don't have access. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Any questions from councillors?
Was there any significant damage over the sort of storms we've had over the summer?
Well, yes, it's come down. Yes, that's really why the leak came again. This has got a few problems. The typhoon has been the problem and we haven't been aware of it. But yes, that eroded down onto the car seal.
Right.
So that's new.
Okay.
That's why I'm here. So, and as you can see, it's only stones, and it's that big gales at the top of the tide. You might say, oh, nothing's happened for 3 months, but then you get, 50 knot winds coming in from the west, and it happens to be at the top of the tide, which doesn't happen very often. The air pressures are higher at the top of the tide than the bottom of the tide. Which is probably the reason why it hasn't gone so quickly. But yes, this is new.
Peter and then Terry, please.
Gilbert, thank you for highlighting this. How far is that? What's happening there at Point? How far is that from the slip that we're experiencing on that road?
The one that's moving now all the time. It's probably 300 metres.
Right, and so 300 metres further.
Further to yeah, that's a bit of a surprise, but that slip is there's water running through it on the bottom. There must be a screen above it that I might say a ditch that diverted the water might help that way. But that's
Thanks for
that part.
Hey, Gilbert, are you thinking about the geotech rocks, building it up to the side? Is that the kind of operation you're thinking about?
This one here?
Yeah.
Well, I'm leaving it to the council engineers. They generally, when they apply themselves, they do a very good job. So I honestly don't know. I think.
You talk about putting boulders around the bottom and all that, have you?
Well, gave you the basket, so we'll probably can push it out to make it a little bit wider.
Right.
But whatever they did on the eastern side,
Yeah.
the eastern side is much higher, so much bigger job. This is very low. I think it would be for the engineers, it should be pretty flexible. Just putting a bit of urgency.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gilbert. Any other questions? Gilbert, and I just want to thank you. I know that from what I've been told over the years that you've done a lot of community work and made a big contribution to our district. Thank you for that. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Yes. Peter's online now, so we'll go to Peter Pratt online, please. Peter, can you hear us? You might need to unmute Peter if you haven't done that already.
And I'll try that.
Then we can hear you now.
Okay, that's good.
Peter, so just so to put the councillors in the picture, you made a submission to the dog control bylaw process, and you are now speaking to that. There was a bit of an error, so this is behind the 8 ball, but we're catching up now. And everyone has a copy of this submission.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay.
Have they, everyone seen the photos that I sent out?
Yes.
It just doesn't matter too much, but I did send some photos out with that attachment.
Yes,
That's good. All photos.
Thank you.
So, obviously, I've read the reports from council staff, their comprehensive report on the submissions. And obviously, I disagree with their analysis and recommendations in regards to my submission. And my statement addresses that disagreement, if you like. And so as I've said in that statement, I don't believe that council has anything in the bylaw that meets objective 1 in the policy for Little Bay. There's nothing there to meet that objective in objective 1, which is to give some protection to the wildlife. So there's nothing in there for that to happen at Little Bay. That's what I'm saying. And so I propose some changes, which is similar to what happens at nearby beaches, the same restrictions or similar restrictions. And so that's what I'm requesting, I guess, that change to the bylaw for Little Bay. There's not much more I can really say. If you want me to talk through the written statement that I've got there, I can do that point by point, but I've laid it out pretty much as I see it. And so I'd request the council to consider that carefully. Yeah.
Peter, thank you. Yes, we have your written submission, which is excellent. Well done. And that will be taken into consideration as we go through the adoption of the bylaw. Really appreciate you taking the time to do that. Do the council have any questions? All right, thank you, Peter. We'll
Thanks,
move on.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Adrian, you have 2 minutes to speak.
Oh, I don't need 2 minutes. I do need electric.
Most people have 5, but we make an exception. So 5 minutes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Worship, fellow councillors and staff. Here, I 2 minds to come or not, I decided I would, but I want to accept the challenge, and the challenge was issued to me at the annual plan round when Councillor Morrison from Coromandel suggested that I should tell the council how they can save some money. And I'm here today to do that. I believe it. Well, but I ain't got the rules reconsideration like that. So, one of the problems that Steve Coromandel District Council has is the amount of land that's not rated. And it's always difficult for councils to make money if you haven't got enough rateable land to do so. 62% of the land is locked up by DOC, which doesn't pay rates. So over the years, I've thought about different ways we could generate money for this council. And I'm just proposing to go through those now. Ways to make money, toll roads. This peninsula is the most suitable place in New Zealand for tolling. So this is only, of course, not the locals, block on a transponder, but just you imagine a number of people coming here over Christmas and periods like that. We can toll this road both sides of the peninsula very easy. Things they do on the Puhoi Road or on the bypass road down to Te Puke. It's very simple to do, money's collected, and we can go a long way towards covering the cost on council roads. These are bullet points. The other thing I'd like to establish a joint information tier at Kobu between DOT and council. I tried to get that years ago. I believe that they're the two biggest players on the peninsula, council and DOT. A lot of people come on the peninsula. We have the biggest DOT hut in New Zealand, 80 beds up the Tauranga Valley. And if we set up an information centre out there, we capture everybody come into the area and they can have a discussion about where they're going, what they're doing. And that's going to generate a lot more money coming to this thing. So explain the places where you go, like they just drive right around, like Luke covered this a little while ago. Is that 2 minutes up already?
That's fast.
The second one is the third one is capital value rating. This is a real doozy and it's been up before council many times. At the moment, our rating system is very unfair. It's not a balanced rating system at all. And we're always used to be told of an example of Whamata, for example, where there's a little fibre light shack alongside a house with 6 bathrooms and things like that. The little lady in the fibre light shack is paying just as much rate as the people in the house with six bathrooms in their house, the bedrooms and bathrooms in their house. And we just don't think that's fair. You know, we went capital value rating, unfortunately, Thames got one of the highest capital value rating areas, we'll probably cop more than anybody else. That is the fairest way of determining, you know, those who've got to pay it better than capital value taxes. Here's the big one. I've tried this for years and it hasn't worked. I'll bring it back to this council. Change the name to the Coromandel Peninsula District Council. We're the only council in New Zealand could use that name. Banks Peninsula was the previous one. They got amalgamated in the Christchurch City Council. We're the only one. Wherever you go away from here, it's difficult to tell. You go away and they say, oh, where are you from? And say, oh, Thames Coromandel District Council. So where's that? They say, oh, it's on the Coromandel Peninsula. Everybody knows the Coromandel Peninsula. Very few people know the Thames Coromandel are once you get away from this area here. We are, and it's an excellent way to promote the peninsula and remove the angst, which is the biggest bugbear in the state. Everybody talks about paying the rates and the rates going to Thames, or when the rates go to Thames, Nathan Thames get the benefit of it. You only need to look around Thames to see we don't get the benefit of the district rates at all. So the Coromandel Peninsula District Council got a nice ring to it. It's simple to operate, and it'll be very simple. And the what they put up against it previously was change all the letterheads. Now most of the things are done online, IT, you don't have to change letterheads, change the logos, and only change one word, just take out Thames and put it in the next slide. So, and it originated from Coromandel Borough Council, Cairns Borough Council, Thames County Council, and they thought that in 1975, thought that's a good way of amalgamating them and having that name, which is a bit dumb now. That's 1975 and almost into 2025. How many more minutes?
45 seconds.
Wow. Public partnership developments, Thames Airfield's got hangars out in 38 hectares of land behind Ottawa Thames. We have the Blue Skies connection between Cairns, Woody and Palmer. If you ever get any more roads to go out, we've got some way of doing those sorts of things and travelling freely around the Coromandel Peninsula. The big one I'd like to talk about, because that was a way to make money, about saving money. Instead of the wastewater from the treatment plants being pumped into the forestry at Whamata onto the airfields or whatever at the Palmer Golf Club and Footy Hangar. That water that comes out of those treated water comes out of those wastewater plants is potable. You can drink it. There are photographs in front of the Hauraki Hill of the engineer drinking that water. It just needs stripping, the nitrogen needs stripping out. Why go invest in a lot of water places to water dams, water treatment plants? You can be using that water straight from that area there. Straight out of the waste, treated water straight out of the wastewater plant. And they're the most advanced plants, some of the most advanced plants in New Zealand. They cost us around about $84 million. Using private contractors on the Tappers Corridor, the 309 north of Colville, get away with a big contractor, just be a small contractor who can look after that. A private contractor look after Tappers Corridor, be base there, tractors, things like that, clear all the slips, keep the culverts open, things like that. Remove the H-drives from trucks off the peninsula, they're wrecking this peninsula. The roads are just not suitable for 50-ton vehicles on this Coromandel Peninsula. We're part of the Road Controlling Authority, we can do that. Heavy trucks and tourists don't mix on Thames Coast Road.
Thanks.
I just want one more thing, just one last line.
One more, and
Three muscle farmers want to use coconut right now. Barge muscle don't go with $20 a ton, I'm only 10,000 tons a year going there. You can work the money out yourself.
thank you so much. Any questions for Adrian?
But that's the whole.
It's a lot in there.
I'd just like to say I enjoyed it. That's not good.
I'll just say one thing, council, my abject apologies over, terms of reference for board chairs. It wasn't my good friend Peter River, Councillor Peter River, probably would not be pointing my friend, who reminded me we didn't put in the submission, only Coromandel put the action on Murphy Bay did. The council started an excellent job. They did exactly what the motion said. They sent it all out to the chair. I expected to go to the board managers and would appear on our agenda. It didn't, so my abject apologies. Peter, though we did make a submission. I can say this. I think that the terms of reference are quite descriptive and we'll work through it, I guess, but I hope you councils.
Thank you.
Leading and playing do it.
Adrian, come back. Come back.
We have a couple of questions. One from Peter and Dilly.
Oh, sorry.
Mine was just a quick comment of question to my husband in that photo drinking poo water.
And somebody in the.
It hasn't had any effects.
It's available.
Is that any nasty taste? Got no fluoride in it.
All right, so Peter, quick question.
Can I just, so when you're talking about the name change, Thames Coromandel District Council, was that Coromandel District Council or Coromandel Peninsula District?
Coromandel Peninsula. Absolutely, categorically.
Thank you. All right, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Could I get a mover in a second, please, for?
I'll move.
Rebecca and
I'll second.
Peter, thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Any conflicts of interest?
2.2.
2.2. Yes.
Signage.
No, thank you. Any items not on the agenda? I have two that I would like to add. Please. One is an acknowledgement and a letter of thanks to Waikato Regional Council for their support on COVID. And the second one is a vote of thanks to Peter Rebel and Mitch King for their presentation to WRC for the funding, additional funding for COVID. So just when we get to those other items, I'd just like to.
I know I have a conflict of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Rebel. We'll take it under advisement. Okay, we're going to move to minutes for confirmation, item 1.5. So what we're going to do is we've got a lot of minutes to get through here. We'll be taking the recommendations separately. We've got a lot of clauses 1 and 2 for TCDC council meetings. And receive the reports. So can I get a mover? So we're receiving the community board minutes, the mover and second of the community board meetings, Dale, please.
Yep.
And Robin, thank you.
I've got one matter. It's just a comma. Page 20 on the Mercury Bay Community Board. In person, there should be a comma is in the wrong place. It should be after Rika's name. It's got her as deputy chair. The comma should be in the other spot.
Thank you, Councillor Gottlieb. Page 20.
No, that's right.
The chair,
Confused.
through the chair,
Yes.
councillor Getty Pearsall is the deputy chair.
She is actually the deputy chair.
He is deputy chair.
Correct.
Don't you forget it, Gary.
I would have thought that was skating on thin ice there.
Councillor Gottlieb, this has been well canvassed and discussed at the time that the community board positions were put in place. We're not going to get into that discussion at this point. So we'll put the motion, mover and a seconder to receive the report. We've got those. Right. Do we, put the motion, please, all those in favour? Aye. Those against? It's carried, thank you. We are confirming council minutes for 4 meetings. 30th March, 4th April, 5th April and 26th of April. This is the first opportunity that we've had to do this. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the council minutes, please? Councillor Grant, Councillor Revel. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Thames Community Board meetings, so need a mover and a seconder for those separately.
Correct. The chair, this is just for the recommendation that came through from the Thames Community Board, so we need to approve that recommendation.
So the recommendation this has already been processed by the Thames Community Board. We're just confirming that. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Yep. Councillor Sinclair, seconder Councillor Rodley. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion is carried. We're moving now to item 2.1, adoption of amended activities in public places bylaw. So the work's already been done on this. Councillors have read the report. We are now adopting all the hard work that's been done. We're welcoming Meg here. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Meg's online and Leslie is here. So councillors have read the report. Meg and Leslie, do you have anything there? Or do you just want to open this to questions?
No, I have nothing to add. I think the report is pretty self-explanatory. This is the first of the 3 bylaws that we're going to ask you to adopt today. I recommend that you adopt. There were no changes to the regulations, but I will leave maybe to perhaps maybe have you got any comments to add to me?
No, nothing further to add from that, Leslie. Thank you.
So the work's been done. There's no changes. So get a mover and a seconder to receive this, please.
I'll receive. I'll move.
I'll second.
And we're going to put the motion. All those in favour to adopt the bylaw?
Any questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. Any questions?
Yes, so my just questions around that, you've done the policy, fantastic, walk through it. Was this all done internally or would you do an outside consultant work with this?
This is done internally.
All done by internal staff. That's great. Thank you. Great job.
I'd second that. Well done. A lot of work. Rob.
Hi. Sorry, I know that you're so close to the end. On page 94, an approval for trading in public places may include any of the following conditions. Clause 1 has 2 closed brackets, but only 1 open bracket.
Nice.
Sorry, I know, but it just,
We're all editors.
you need to remove 1 or add something and just, and then it will be perfect.
It's just use commas.
Yeah, too many closed brackets. Yeah.
Through the chair, thank you so much for that, Councillor Sinclair. I've just noted that down. So double checking, is that paragraph 1 of schedule 1?
Yes, correct.
Wonderful. So Leslie, do you want to, or just double checking that we can make that small change, that typo change before we have the bylaw signed and sealed later on?
Through the chair, I think it's quite possible that's a minor amendment to the bylaw that we can make before it's actually sealed.
You're not seeing any procedural issues to us passing this today and you fixing that later on?
The chair, no, your worship, I think that it makes no difference to the meaning.
Do you have that, Councillor?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we'll put the resolution. All those in favour?
Aye.
Yes. Very, thank you. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you. Meg, you're still with us for the signs and advertising bylaw. And were there any changes? to this one as we went through the
Yes.
There were changes requested and they're reflected in the proposed resolution, recommended resolutions.
Yes, so your worship, I'm happy to give you a quick summary of the 4 changes that we've suggested since deliberations. Might be more helpful as opposed to reading them in the resolutions.
Thank you, Meg, if you don't mind doing that. Much appreciated.
Alrighty, so at deliberations, we discussed some further changes to the text. There are 4 of them that we're proposing to make today. So the first one is to update some confusing wording that was in Schedule 4. I think it was Councillor Rodley that pointed out that some of the wording around flags and banners not protruding into the roadside or the pavement didn't quite make sense. So we have just made a small edit there so that it is it's more practical, that part of Schedule 4. The second change is that we are replacing illuminated signs with illuminated static signs. We felt that it was more clear what we were talking about there if we refer to them as illuminated static signs. The third change is to tweak the illuminated signs provisions somewhat. So one of the councillors pointed out that the illuminated signs provisions could be a little bit more comprehensive. And so what we have done is we have pulled some of the text from the traffic control devices manual and put it into the bylaw itself as opposed to referencing the traffic control devices manual. And so we felt that that's a little bit more straightforward to pick up and read. And the last change is to note that any sign that fits within, that is managed under Schedule 5 must also comply with the general requirements in Schedule 1. Now, signs under Schedule 5 are those changeable message signs or digital billboards. So we're just making it clear that they must also comply with Schedule 1, the general requirements for signs. So those are the 4 changes. I'm happy to answer any questions about those, if anyone has any.
Thank you, Meg. Any questions of Meg?
Yeah, Meg, thank you. Yes, very well done, this policy. I've had a good look at it. Again, can I ask the question, was this done internally with staff or did you have an outside contractor?
It was all internal.
Internally with staff. Again, thank you very much. Very good.
Thanks. Okay, any further questions? Will I get a mover and a seconder, please, to receive the report? Robin and Rika.
Oh, yes.
The motion, all those in favour to adopt the advertising. Aye. Those against? Thank you, that is carried. Well done. Well done, Pete. Thank you. We're now moving to item 2.3, dog control policy, dog control bylaw. We have, firstly, you're involved in this one, and thank you, Meg.
That's it. Good W, that's what we were saying.
There were some changes involved in this. We should see this first and then open. I'll get a mover in a second to receive this, please. Robin and John, thank you. Okay. So perhaps if you could walk us through the key changes, councillors were involved in this read the report, the key changes that we need to.
Absolutely, but through your worship, before we do that, may we first give some consideration to Mr. Pratt's submission at the previous meeting, at the beginning of the meeting, and then we can move to the report. And then we have here, we verbally observe our further staff advice.
It was perhaps late, we know that. Are you able to do that? Is that?
Yeah, we've managed to have a corridor on the topic. So off the top, staff do not recommend any further changes of the policy from
Mr Pratt's verbal presentation to council today. So just to talk to his points, he raised in his submission that he circulated over the weekend that the lack of enforcement in the remote areas, and as we know, council does take a risk-based approach to enforcement in the district just to balance the cost of compliance with the risk of breaching the rule. So people staff simply just can't be everywhere all at once. He also raised in his submission over the weekend that dog owners do use Little Bay as an off-lead area because other places do have wildlife restrictions. And that reflects our policy and practice, balancing those three main factors that we're required to understand, which we already know is protection of wildlife, protection of people's health and safety, and also providing for recreational opportunities for dog owners and dogs. The council does work closely with DOC, as you recall, to make sure that any wildlife protection provisions we put in place do have a really solid evidence-based approach. And in their submission to our policy and bylaw, DOC was silent on Little Bay, and we have not received any advice as to whether wildlife protections are required in that beach. They did, of course, provide lots of advice of other places where they wanted more increased protection. And one of those areas was Puatuna, which council considered, and on balance was decided that temporary area restrictions was a really good way to manage that interface between people being to the beach and the protection of wildlife. And this, of course, is an option for us to use in conjunction with the existing rules on the beach, which is that dogs must be under control at all times. And that is how we can deliver on objective one of the policy, which the submitter raised as needing to protect wildlife. So we are able to find people in breach of the bylaw if the dog is under not in control. And also just, I guess, to be specific about Little Bay, when council staff engage with the DOC later in the year for the upcoming nesting season, they will specifically mention Little Bay just to check whether or not temporary area restrictions are open. So that's what we had prepared. Any other questions?
Thank you. Any questions for him? I'm sorry.
Can't see the eclipse of my seat.
Please.
Just kind of, and I'm all for, I argue very strongly for the Hot Water Beach Amendment and all the rest of it, we're really for dog owners being able to go and exercise their dogs. But I think giving some credit to what Mr Pratt has put forward, put those beaches on either side of it. So people have travelled here sort of deliberately to be able to let their, and it's not a close to town sort of beach, is it? It's actually going a wee way to let your dog roam. To me, it feels a little bit inconsistent that that beach doesn't have some sort of restriction, and he does suggest there's part of the beach that could be the western end of the beach beyond the rocky outcrop. But beaches around it are prohibited at all dates and times. He's kind of looking for a compromise. I do have a degree of sympathy for what he's trying to achieve. I'm just wondering what other councillors think about that.
If I could just quickly respond to that point, yeah, and it's a good one. We have consistency in our approach to beaches in terms of two types of restrictions that we apply. And Little Bay does have a restriction over summer, like our beaches do, and where we get wildlife, like all other beaches where we have wildlife protection that we need in place, that hasn't been a significant breeding area, we will use the temporary restrictions, which is something that we can pick up specifically. Normally we ask for DOC to supply us the list because they are the experts in the area. This is one that they don't provide us information on because maybe it doesn't meet their threshold, but we will proactively ask them about Little Bay. But a temporary restriction would be the appropriate way and the consistent way to deal with wildlife on Little Bay.
Have you had this discussion with Mr. Pratt?
Yes, yeah. Look, with Mr. Pratt has been in touch with our staff for a number of years, and I think he's raised he raised these similar issues in his freedom camping submission and potentially in the reserve management, so that they're well known, and that's why we were able to respond to today. They're not new issues that they're raised. It is about getting that balance. He does raise fair points, but we need to get that balance as in touched on between those three different requirements of the Act. And we think it would be excessive to make it prohibited beach.
Am I misreading this? Because I think he's asking to propose to change Little Bay to the entire beach on leash from Labour Weekend to the 1st of March.
Yeah.
And the response to that you were saying is you would think that would be too restrictive.
Just similar to where we went out to propose that restriction, wider wildlife restriction. That's what we consulted on. We heard feedback from that community to say, actually, that's not going to work for us in terms of dog exercise, and we prefer to deal with that through temporary restrictions. Little Bay would be similar. We have the option to put the wider.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, okay.
We haven't consulted on that, and we haven't had evidence from DOC, who would be the expert agency that way. So we are saying we could deal with Mr. Pratt's submission by speaking with DOC about whether there is a wildlife issue there that we need to protect, and if so, we can apply temporary restriction like we've consistently applied to Curritum.
Right, sorry, I thought temporary restriction meant from Labour Weekend to, but you're talking about temporary zone area.
Temporary, then we would.
Yeah, I get it.
Rope off the nested area, we could, dogs have to be on lead within 100 metres of that, and we can put that for as long as we need. And we actually have the ability, if we want to, prohibit dogs around that if it's enforcement issue. It's in Mr. Pratt's submission that we can't be in Little Bay every day. So if it needs a stronger response, we can still do that through our temporary restrictions.
Thank you.
Thank you. So where we're at the moment is the proposal is that there are, based on Mr. Pratt's submission, there are no changes, but we're confident that there are mechanisms in place to allow us to work within the scope of what's existing to manage that area adequately.
That's the start.
Okay. So unless there's any further discussion and any questions, I'll put the motion. Okay, all those in favour?
I'll say.
So we've
For the moment,
sorry, we've got a specific recommendation to receive just submission.
Oh, okay.
And to confirm that no changes have to be made as a result of this submission and in respect to the balance of the report.
Okay. So let me make sure I get my process right in terms of the recommendation from Mr. Pratt's. That's different from what's on.
Correct. So through the chair, what the staff are recommending is 2 new courses, which is the ones that are highlighted.
Okay, so can we take both at the same time? So we'll put, can I get a mover and a seconder for items 2 and 3, please? Councillor Morrissey, Councillor Rodley, thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Motion carries. Those are carried, thank you. And then we can take items 4 and 5 together. Could I get a mover and a seconder for items 4 and 5, please?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong page. My mistake.
Actually, can I just go back and ask a question about the items 2 and 3? Because it says acknowledges Peter Pratt's verbal presentation to council, but we haven't actually accepted that he had a late submission. Do we need to do that, or is that sufficient? The fact that it was a late submission.
So the chair, his written submission, which was received late, was considered in the deliberations.
Perfect. Right.
So it was the request for verbal submission that we missed, wasn't it?
No, that's my misunderstanding. Apologies.
Okay, so items 4, 5, and 6.
7.
And 7.
Because it keeps on giving
all of them.
We've done 4 and 5. We've added in 4 and 5.
It's through the chair.
Yeah.
We've only done one to receive the report,
Yeah,
two,
so
and
it's three.
three.
So we're now, can I get a mover and a second, and then please for 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8, and 9. Delhi and Martin. You all those in favour? So 10 and 11. Sorry, because I'm working on one here which doesn't have those. Yeah, sorry. I need to stick to that one, not this one, because the numbers are not lining up. Okay, so 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Councillor Connell and Councillor Rodley, are you happy to move and second those? Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. We got there.
And can I start the question through the chair? Again, was this done internally or did you use outside contractors?
This was started internally with staff. I think with Rachel Paul, who started right at the start of the process, and due to resignations and staff vacancies, we've had Emma come in and support the completion of the bylaw.
Well done.
Thank you. Okay, how are we going at the time? Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to item 3.1. Covering progress and introduction to development of recovery. We'll invite Stephen down to speak to this, if that's all right.
Just by way of introduction, I think we've all met Steve in my previous meetings. So I think I covered Stephen's background in local government. What's become abundantly obvious as we track through the recovery process is value of Stephen's pre-existing relationships from previous roles, particularly within the local government sector, within Minister's office and with NZTA. So I just feel really pleased to have Stephen on staff. I think we're extremely lucky, and you'll see from the quality of this report and the program that we have entered into council, just how well this really difficult process is going. And make no mistake, this is a really difficult process. The work with NZTA is tracking really well, but bringing two organisations to work together who haven't historically worked together is a challenge. And we're seeing some really great progress. And over to Stephen to step through.
Thank you, Stephen. So I'll get a mover and a seconder to receive the report, please, and then we'll open it up to Stephen. So Terry and Peter, thank you. And over to you, Stephen.
Thank you. And kia ora tātou elected members and staff, good to be here. Thank you. Look, we've tried to capture the flavour and as much as we can about what's happening. We're still in a bit of a transition in my observation of coming out of the response phase and then trying to get really focused on what are the things that we need to deliver as part of our recovery. I've been really impressed with how the team is bearing up, and the unusual challenge that I think TCDC has that others don't is that we are going to have more events, and we keep trying to get into recovery and drag that into response, and that is going to continue to challenge the organisation over the next year or two. As each major decision is announced, for example, State Highway 25A, certainty helps us, even if we aren't happy with the predicted date of reopening 25A, for example. We're happier that we've got certainty that we know what it is, and we'll have a good idea soon what target opening date will be, and that allows different communities to make decisions on the back of, okay, I know how long I've put up with a longer travel time, less accessibility, whatever it might be. And we can be clear about that. As CEO Aileen has mentioned, the big two plays that we're trying to work together with, particularly Waka Kotahi on, is to create a partnership around something that I would just call, for the purpose of thinking about it, Coromandel roads, so that we address the recovery in a way that isn't about you do this and they do that, but we actually do things together. Because over my experience, I think the more you can partner and collaborate, the better the results are. They tend to be more durable, and they also tend to represent better value for money in the long run. Whoever has issued the message to Waka Kotahi, they have approached working with TCDC with a genuine desire to partner in a way that I don't think has occurred before. They decided very early on that a bespoke model would likely work best in the Coromandel. And that is not what has been put in place in the East Coast and Hawke's Bay, where there is a gargantuan alliance has been formed with the very biggest contractors in the country, and they tested their thinking with us, and we were very quick to say we think the unique circumstances confronting this council, and that's around new events that are just repeating the unprecedented rainfall that we're seeing across the district, that we would be better off going for a bespoke model where we were in the tent really completely and feeling like joint partners and not being told what to do, how to do it, actually coming up with joint solutions. So that's the big play in transport. And when I talk about transport, yes, we're talking about our roading network, which is our key lifeline. But in actual fact, if you think about TCDC being a recreational playground of many, many people in this part of the North Island, access ways, cycle ways, walking tracks, access to recreational opportunity is really important as part of our transport network. And the second play that is really going to challenge us all, I think, is how do we help create thriving businesses that are sustainable through what will be year 4 of really, really big challenges for businesses, both large and small. So look, I think that's probably enough. Leanne, we're happy to answer questions and discussion about any project.
Thank you, Stephen. Questions for Stephen? Councillor Grant.
I have a number of questions. The table which is shown in the report, which is headed tourism visitor spend, can you just confirm that the percentage change figure for the total is incorrect?
Yes, so thank you, Councillor. We did spot that, I think yesterday. So we've got a copy of some of those percentage figures should not effectively be in the spreadsheet, needed to be removed. So we've tidied that up yesterday.
So an additional question then, in regard to business support that you referred to in your opening comments, that's also contained in the document itself, where under the heading of recovery activity to date, there's the Destination Coromandel and the various business associations. We can together to a plan to execute promotional programs to highlight the peninsula. Can you just give me some background as to where that information came from? Yep.
Through the chair. This is through our ED unit, and so this is just work in progress at the moment. So the economic development team is reaching out to the business associations to look at appropriate work. So it's very much being planned at the moment and in discussion.
Well, through the chair, I can respond to that by saying that I have actually spoken to two of the business associations who have no knowledge of that at all, and are not aware of any collaborative work or discussions that have taken place. In fact, the contact from Destination Coromandel, or Hauraki Coromandel, it's been very little to the business associations. It did occur when there was some criticism of them in the early days after the event occurred, and nothing has been heard since then from that group to the business associations. The feeling that I'm getting out there is that a number of these organisations are feeling completely isolated and very concerned by the reactions they're having from members. And while I think that the council has a limited responsibility, it's certainly one of the agencies that is being looked at, or one of the organisations that are being looked at, to be able to help coordinate some activities, to be able to provide the support that's needed to these businesses and situations that they're in at the moment. I was talking to one very large operator in the Mercury Bay area who is quite openly advising that they're losing substantial amounts of money on a weekly basis and have a fund of money to support them for a period of time that will not last forever. And was not able to talk to any degree of proactive support that had been provided. So I just raise these because I read this report and there's a lot of talk, but I don't see any sort of actions that are planned or in place to try and deal with an issue which is absolutely causing major worry, as we heard at a meeting last Friday in the Tairo area, and as I'm constantly hearing from people in the Mercury Bay area. I'm very worried about the situation involving our local economy and business support. And just reading this report, I was left feeling a little underwhelmed in regard to what actions we are planning to take.
Councillor Walker and then Councillor Rickman.
Yes, Stephen. Yeah, I appreciate the work you're putting into this. Could you just talk a little bit about a spoke operation for the Coromandel versus a gigantic one for down in the Hawke's Bay? So what does that mean? Could you put that into some context for me?
So I'll try and do that. So what they've done with Hawke's Bay, Tairāwhiti and Wairau is they're treating it as a single recovery activity.
Yeah.
And they've got the largest, New Zealand-based tier 1 contractors attacking that fix, rebuild. If you look at the nature of damage that has occurred in the peninsula to what happened with, broken stop banks and the silt coming through, particularly with the cyclone, that the damage here is different, and it is the task is to try and look at the network and upgrade the resilience of it as part of the repair of both overslips, underslips and dropouts. And rather than have a really large contractor trying to do that, we and Waka Kotahi have agreed that we would be better to combine our contracting effort in a coordinated way, and that we would be able, we believe we can get more done in that framework, in that contracting framework. So obviously, Waka Kotahi have got Higgins looking after the state highway network on the peninsula, and TCDC has got its own contractors as well. And that we come up with a model that enables us to draw more out of the local contracting market and not just be dealing with one or maybe two those tier one contractors, so that it's more locally resourced. And we're working with Waka Kotahi to try and create some employment program and redeployment opportunities so that we can build a construction workforce in this district, which hopefully will be able to live close enough to where the work is, so that they get an opportunity to grow a career in the roading and transport construction fields.
Thank you. And I think I've heard that voice quite clearly come through from the community. We've had some community meetings and local contracts are saying they are keen to get involved with it. So I just wonder that when that discussion has happened, that didn't stop it until they start to look at those contractors in those areas who are prepared to, with the equipment to do the work, and hope that is part of that mix that happens. So thank you for that.
Peter.
Thanks. Stephen, perhaps just going back to some of the matters that Councillor Grant was raising. Yesterday, I had a meeting with the Thames Business Association, and they specifically asked me to ensure that this item on this report was corrected, because they pointed out that there has been nothing where they have been asked to work in conjunction with Mercury Bay and the other business associations. They said that this is clearly an incorrect report. On the other hand, they did point out that they thought there could be huge benefit, in fact, of those different organisations working together with some consistency of themes and leveraging the expertise. And the Thames Business Association has been in existence for 5 years and is well established and is very active. So I would want to encourage that what's been said in the report, something actually happens to it. In conjunction with that, and I was speaking for the Thames Business Association, in conjunction with that, these are not normal times for the Business Association. They are dealing with extremely anxious business owners. They have concerns about the mental health of businesses in town, and it's just not a great place to be. And at the moment, they seem extremely frustrated that they do not have any specific funding to enable them to undertake what they would define as recovery activities for business, and what can they do to help businesses recover. And they're just feeling that, they're just basically saying they're kind of being left out of that. So my appeal is that in this recovery work that's being done, that some specific and clearly definable action gets taken for the business associations right around the peninsula, and in particular for the Thames Business Association, which is the largest, most active, and represents something that is probably 45–50% of the GDP of our peninsula.
Back to some of that, through the chair. So the initial recovery with the businesses, we were distributing the business assistance fund, and that was over $8 million. So our staff working alongside other agencies has spent quite a lot of time just doing the sharp, sustained work we needed to get to individual businesses. To your points, John, if you could share with me that feedback, I'll pass it on to our team, because I have evidence that our ED team have been working and discussing with all the business associations around the district about what their issues are, and also about planning ahead as to how we can help and support. We have been lobbying through the government around the need for business associations to be supported, and we expect that that has been heard, and we could have some news about that very shortly. There is a program of work that is being designed, and we'll be able to share that very shortly around all of the things that you're addressing around the mental health of businesses, other forms of support that other agencies can provide. It's just getting together, and we've been able, through the recovery plan, it's just getting all of those agencies together to start factoring out and planning how that's going to be implemented from June onwards, so that short, medium, long term. So we'll be able to share that very shortly around that plan.
Through the chair, would it be right for me to assume that through all that thinking and planning that you are talking with the business associations and involving them in that planning?
Absolutely. So one of our executive teams actually in Mercury Bay today talking to businesses around that, and there are more meetings planned.
Go to councillor.
Thank you for your report, Stephen, and I appreciate the chart that shows that we've gone through the hero stage and we're now in the disillusionment stage. That was well illustrated. Discussion on page 225 of the packet, talking about the recovery plan. And as these my fellow councillors have mentioned, thriving businesses, I'm quite interested in rural and community support and that connectivity. And what I would really like to see, I've talked to Pam Bolt. The Mercury Bay Council has got 15 minutes scheduled with Gary Taylor today to talk about feedback about the recovery response, and I appreciate the lack of time and schedules to have all of us talk about that, but I think it's bigger than Ben-Hur, and it's the biggest thing that's happened to us since Cyclone Bowler back in 80, whatever it was. So I'm a little bit frustrated about that. I'm frustrated because I go to ratepayer meetings like Orpito Bay, for example, and there's a massive serve around the fact that it was 6 days before Wakakai, the New World amphibious vehicle, turned up to see everybody was okay. So I've kind of had a bit of pushback from staff that, oh, yes, we're meeting with communities and we will have community response meetings and look at their community response plans and see if they're fit for purpose. But I really do think elected members should be involved in that process as well, because we're the ones, like with the businesses, who get phone calls and go, why haven't we got a satellite phone? So where I'm heading with this is quite long, Kōrero, forgive me, is I think even though we don't have the staff or the money, as has been stated, we need that emergency subcommittee of council, climate change subcommittee of council urgently to work in with someone like yourself, Stephen. And I think rather than pushing the elected members out to the fringes of this, we need to be right in the middle of it, because we've got people saying, I'm terrified Blackjack Road, for example, is going to collapse. And what's the plan? Those community plans, just for an example, Mercury Bay's was well out of date, and I've got a cert from a staff member because I was down as some role that had been discussed, and other people on the checklists were wrong phone numbers are out of date as well. So there's a body of work, and I'm not saying it's your body of work, but I would like to float the idea, I don't know if it's the right time, with the other councillors that we need that subcommittee up and running pronto.
Aileen.
So just clarify that the annual plan process, we've got some money set aside to scale our governance areas so that we can cope with an additional committee. So the plan has always been that we sign that off, and I think it might be tomorrow or the next day. And then we can start putting that in place, but we'll have to bring to affirmative reference and get that committee set up as of 1 July. So that's always been the intention. I take the point that it could be useful to bring forward, but we sort of need the money to move on.
Understood.
Well, my question actually dovetails nicely into yours. So I was reading on page 228 under the headings of rural and community support, recovery activities to date. There's a statement there about council has obtained funding for 10 resilient kits to be placed at marae and community facilities. And I'm happy, Stephen, if you don't know the answer to this, for you to get back to me. But one of the things that our emergency management team does very well and has been reported as being very successful on in the non-financial performance indicators is those community resilience plans. And I think every time we've had a report on that through those non-financials, we've achieved that result. And so sort of a broader question is, how do those resilience kits that you're talking about there fit into the community response plans? And what's the mechanism for being able to look at those measures and say, well, actually, you know, we know now that the measure was okay because it was measuring, but the bigger picture of what we needed to measure was wrong. So, you know, can somebody make a note of needing to change that in the LTP? But then also, you know, how can we review those community response plans in response to the fact that we've had a big emergency, and did they stack up? Do they need more work? Is that somewhere where we need to put many more resources into our emergency management team? Because I know that they work pretty hard and they're pretty stretched. So that was sort of my bigger question. As I said, you don't have to have all the answers right now.
So just very briefly, the Lion Foundation come through with a grant for what we think will deliver what's inside the kit. And Helen and Flynn and Frank Thorne are having individual meetings with those Marae community resilience folk at the moment. So we're going one at a time to talk through how did it work, what didn't work, what do we need to be in the kit. And we have an application in for Red Cross to fund the 10 sheds that will actually house the gear. Not every community might want exactly the same supplies. And so that application to Red Cross is in, but we don't have a yes or a no on that yet. And Gary and Helen and Frank are working through a process of getting feedback about how did the community response plan work. Some felt that they were much better off and did a really effective job, and there are those that have not been as enthusiastic about, you know, how things went from there.
So almost essentially, we've now got 10 extra resilience kits, which could be 10 extra community response plans.
Potentially. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And then Peter.
Yes, so a couple of points on 229, it mentions about the small number of red, yellow and white stickered properties. And this says, we'll update the council verbally on the 16th of May, which was today. I know a number of people who were initially red stickered and have been downgraded to yellow, and 12 weeks on from when that happened, they are incredibly frustrated, stressed, mentally. I've had some extremely emotional people talking to me about this, and they feel that they're not getting support. They've had assessors turn up from EQC and their insurance companies telling them different things. So I'd like to know what our involvement is. I realise that EQC have their stuff that they do, but I would like to see pressure put on, and we're putting pressure on a lot of government departments to be able to say, hey, get with this. There's people living in houses that are smelly. Some of them have still got little bits of water and mud coming down the hillside behind them. I can't even begin to imagine how stressful that must be. So I really want to see us being really proactive with these property owners. And I appreciate whatever that verbal update is that it says we're going to get today.
I wonder if, Aileen, I was wondering if Brian or...
Yeah, I was just going to answer that. So we're aware of a couple. We're not aware of 12, I think it's saying.
So 12 weeks.
Oh, 12 weeks, sorry. Yeah, so we are aware of a couple. The challenge here is that our role as a regulator to do the sticker, and then we don't have function other than we are good corporate citizens and we want to support our community. But that then comes back to whose role is that in council, and do we have that kind of support role to go and assist?
And that's where Lorna's currently recruiting. We've got some government money for some navigators. We're currently recruiting in that space because we've got money and now we can do something. So that's happening at the moment. So it's quite a tricky area and it's also a nationwide problem. All around the country, this is a challenge. And so there is things, and this is where we connect with government to put pressure onto the EQCs and those agencies to do things better and differently. And I think Brian may have something to add there.
Yeah, look, I'd also say that we have, from a regulatory perspective, have kept in contact where we can, on frequency, but obviously the concern comes with they want the problem fixed. And so we've kept that communication up, and we've got a meeting. It was today, it's moved to tomorrow. Some of the wider agencies where some of their land has slipped onto private property, so not, we're going to see in the light to see how we can support getting more traction with the resolution. Obviously we are with our land, if we can get them to do it, but quite often it's a neighbour's property, it's their own property, or it's another government department, and we're trying to keep those people on track above and beyond what our regulatory function is. And it takes a while, but some of our communication has been some of these solutions, even when they know what to do to get the EQC payout, if there is one, and then to arrange contractors. It's not going to be a short fix. We're kind of over that medium bucket. So what we can do in the meantime, as Aileen has touched on, is keep that contact up with them and connect them to where we can with the social networks.
Can I just ask a question through that? Is there any?
Sorry, can I just circle back to you in a second, because we've got some other. Did you have anything else to add to that, Brian, or is your question?
My question's around that. Is there any combination requirement that's had to happen through this? Like is a red sticker or yellow stickers?
So we've got 16 red, and so those are, you can't go into the dwelling, and then we've got yellow, which is partial.
And the accommodation for those people, is there anything the council's helped to organise that, or have they gone and found their own?
A mix. So our worst affected off the coast, family arranged for support where he went to, and that's been dealt privately. And under circumstances, Alan's team through the event put into emergency accommodation and see the government picked up that but not long term. So it isn't
Early on in the event, we were absolutely doing that. Like as time has moved on, people got personal information.
Martha?
Yep, so I just had an additional one. Also on page 228, it talks about thriving businesses working in partnership with DOC to explore acceleration of park, campground and walks infrastructure to open before summer. So I think this is actually vital, because we can do all the support for businesses, we can do all the ad campaigns, we can do all that stuff that we want. But if people know that they get here and they can't go up the pinnacles, they can't go to Cathedral Cove, they can't explore the peninsula, then it's a complete waste of time. And I seriously have doubt, looking at the fact that DOC are like 300 million behind in their maintenance program. I think we will potentially still have DOC stuff closed for 23-24 summer. And I have yet to see, any of the meetings that we've been to in the last few months. I don't think we've had DOC at them. I could be wrong. But yeah, to me, this is absolutely vital. It should be in a separate way up high list on its own. And I'd appreciate if we at some point get some sort of update on how DOC's managing.
So, you'll just give us an update on that, and then.
So the Kawananga Valley is open, and I can personally attest to the quality of the walks up there. However, I think it's closed at the moment for some urgent bridge upgrades. So which is unrelated to the tracks and so on. So that's actually a really big opportunity because it's open, it's beautiful. I was at the Pinnacles a few weeks ago and it was fine. So there's definitely people going there. So that's good news. And the rest of the network got in touch with us. We're meeting them monthly after our recovery just to hear about the issues they've had. A lot of them have been underground infrastructure. So you think about tracks and trails and but well, they've got their toilets and so on. So they've got a big investment, and that's partly why they've been closed, just to get that underground infrastructure functioning. Longer term, I think we've got a role application to the government because stop where in their Acts of Parliament it talks about conservation and biodiversity, doesn't talk about underpinning the tourism economy. So actually, we've got quite a big role around this table just to get the visibility of that fact up there with government to prioritise the dock investment into the environmental parks.
What about Cathedral Cove?
And Cathedral Cove is their next priority. That's right up there for them. I believe they've got some funding to do it too. So I think that seems to be in hand, but it's however many millions in the rest of the Coromandel. They are also got a program to build back better, so that instead of just going like for like, they're actually doing some investigation to go, should we put it here or should we do something better so that this doesn't happen again. So I think they're well planned, but they just need their advocacy to get the funding protection.
Thank you. So we've got Peter and then Rick, please.
Thanks. Stephen, it's great to get this report. Thank you. And just perhaps a little surprise, we've only given 10 minutes to discuss it. So I think it's a lot of it. But could I just reinforce, so the strategic approach you're taking with regards transport, so it's roads and it's walkways and cycleways and all that. I think that's really smart and really good. You didn't mention it, but you have mentioned in the report about the Blue Highway, and we did have in the public forum, Gilbert James mentioned about the vulnerability there is at the moment on the Windy Point at Takuma, and if the trucks can't get access to Sugarloaf, then then they can't. They've got big issues. So I would just want to reinforce and highlight the value that there potentially is for the district in the Blue Highway and thinking about what actually it looks like and what that means and what things we would need to put in place for that, because it gives resilience in a way that is completely different from the other options we have. And I would add airfields into that transport network as well.
Stephen, did you have a specific response to that or just noted it?
Absolutely noted. There is some interest out of Wellington in the Blue Highway opportunities, not just here, but in other parts of the country, particularly the East Coast, around hooking up Napier to other places if the roads were to go out again. Gary Taylor's doing some deeper contingency planning here for TCDC on the assumption that we might have repeat road closures in that part of the peninsula, and what will we do if, let's say, for example, we're out for a week. How do we get stock off the peninsula? What happens to the forestry? And the safety on the state highway network becomes a huge concern for people who are having to pass heavy commercial vehicles.
Thank you, Rick.
I just wanted to add to that Blue Highway comment, and we talk about the freight, for freight and product movements, but there really is a space for people movement as well, in terms of moving people from Coromandel to Auckland, for example, and getting those links re-established. I know certainly some of the industries that I'm involved in are absolutely crying out because can't get heavy vehicles over from Whangamata, so there's materials that are having to come around the long coastway at a huge cost, an absolute huge cost. But I don't want us to lose the sight of people in this Blue Highway formula.
Yeah, it's a great report with lots in it. So there's lots of comments and things. So I just like one on page bottom 226. The 3 new positions, 2 externally funded, have been established to build partnerships across the district to get improved social cohesion between agencies. Working with our cultural navigator, Frank, these people will drive a new way of doing things around here. So what's happening?
Through the chair, so this is through Department of Internal Affairs funding. We've got the 2 social navigators, so they will be working with agencies and the communities to join up better with everybody. So we found that there can be a silo approach, and so these navigators are going to be on the east and west coast and going in and working with health, education, social services, iwi, to look at what other agencies are doing and being able to collaborate so that there is better than to back around Whangarei.
So these people will stay full-time with the council, or are they just for a short-term contract? For how long?
12 months.
12 months.
Yeah.
Right. And they're working with the social issues around the,
Social employment, education. So it's working with all the agencies that we have established strong relationships with historically. So with the likes of MSD
Yeah.
and with
community service trusts and things like that.
agencies.
Okay.
No, just one final thing. In attachment B, page 232, I just want to acknowledge that there's a graph there showing average monthly rainfall as percentage of normal, and for the 11 months that are shown, only 3 of them haven't reached above 100% of the rainfall. And so I really just want to highlight that this isn't just about Gabrielle, it isn't just about the anniversary storms, it's about the fact that we've had a large amount of water. I think a polite way to say that, it's just a large amount of water. Yeah, yes, no, absolutely.
It's a meter, another meter since we wrote the.
No, and I come back to your comments at the very beginning, Stephen, about the fact that we're going, it would be very naive to assume that at this point we're going to continue to have less than 100% rainfall for the remainder. If this is the trend for the last year, we can probably expect a bit more rain. And I don't have any meteorology degrees, so it's just a layperson.
So this is an issue I'd like to revisit when we come to our entertainment
Yes.
over the next 2 days, because seeing what we're seeing come in, we really need to clear the decks a little bit so we can vote.
Yeah.
Just I guess as we're going to wrap this up, I just also wanted to say that this has been an unprecedented year in terms of that rainfall. Our staff had a huge amount of time just dealing with the events and working really long days through January, February, March, just dealing with the event. So the landing into recovery is quite bumpy. As Steve said, we're not quite into recovery, but still dealing with all the other effects that have come through and still really dealing with the growth. And I'm still clearing 10,000 emails we got over that 2-month period, so we're sort of moving now back into business as usual, but there's still these bumps still happening. So I feel that things here are going to be a little bit shaky in the next few months as we re-establish business as usual and cross our fingers really tightly that we don't have another event that throws us back into recovery. So no, as staff, we do feel the stuff you feel, and we do get those phone calls and letters, probably not quite as personally as you do, but we're certainly very aware that in this period of time, there's never enough we can do. The issue is that there's never enough hours in the day to do all the things that need doing. So we sort of trying to focus in the immediate response and getting things done, but also with an eye to the longer term strategy and long term future. Because right now, what they say, never waste a good crisis. Right now, we have a massive opportunity to hopefully fix things in the long term as well as trying to deal with the medium term. So that's the balance we're trying to strike. It's a conversation that we need to take into any discussion about what effort we put in.
Agreed.
I would just, I'm going to push back on some of John's comments because I see what this team and staff here and what everyone involved in this recovery process has been subjected to, and what the effort they've put in and the work they put in every single day. I think it's really important that we do not undervalue the effort that's gone in from Laura and her team, because it has been extraordinary under very, very difficult circumstances. We have heard from business people, in particular, we've heard from our communities that they need our help, and a huge amount of work has gone into trying to access and provide and gain that funding and provide that help to people. Over 600 business operators have been directly supported by the work that this council has been able to do, and money has gone into their bank accounts. Over 200 people have been helped by the Mineral Relief Fund. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens because a lot of people put a lot of work into making that happen. We've had the advisory group the minister has asked us to put together. Two of the business associations are directly involved in that. They've been invited onto that advisory group. And the business associations we're contacting them and working with them on a regular basis. So I do push back on the comment that the business associations have not been contacted. That's simply not true. The business associations have been supported and will continue to be supported. But as Warren Barr said in the meeting on Friday in Tairua, John, the business operators in this district also have to come back with some ideas of their own. Excuse me. So we are looking to support initiatives from them as well. It's not enough to just look at council as the most visible operation to provide all the answers. There's a limit to how much we can do, and I just want to pay tribute to the staff and the teams that have done this work for a lot of months to make sure that we minimise the impact on our communities as much as we possibly can. Period.
Back to Stephen. I just want to know what your next moves are. What's the next steps for you? You're obviously building these relationships with Whakakatāi. How far up the chain, I'm not too sure, but most probably close to the top. What's down the track for us?
Yeah, so look, through the meeting, I always like to be pretty cautious about, making announcements. I'd much prefer to come along and say, this is where we are and this is what we've actually achieved. So we're in that space at the moment with Whakakatāi. We believe that we are going to work in partnership, work away at concrete roads is a thing that we think about in a single view, and that we will support their efforts to effectively preparing an investment plan for the most critical and the first 50 sites on 25 and 25A that need to be repaired, rebuilt and made more resilient in the process. So there's quite a lot of work to do to go from where they are now and where we are to then get their top 50 and our top sites, and then create a program that we can actually announce will be taking place. And there's a 12-week sprint happening at the moment between the two organisations and some of our partners to come up with that first go at the top 50 sites. Once we've cleared the investment hurdles at NZTA, and clearly we would be drawing on some of the $1 billion announcement on the weekend. That's why we need to go fast. We want to get access to as much of that as we can, and we obviously want to be taking advantage of the 91% FAR rate that will go through the rest of this financial year and all of the next financial year. We'll be wanting to announce what we're going to do together as soon as we can, but realistically, it's probably three months away for you to hear about the next milestone, which will be we've come up with their draft list. And the other big play here is to integrate the shoreline management pathway opportunities that will come with those top 50 sites, because some of them will be on the coast, on the coast.
So do you feel this $1 billion that they've talked about, do you think there's any political change could happen with the government coming up to election? But you feel comfortable this is locked in for the...
Sorry, I'm going to step in there because I don't think that's a fair question for Stephen, and I don't think it's one that is appropriate that is thrown at him within the confines of our council. So I'm going to suggest that we wrap up this discussion here. We've got another item that we want to get through before we go to morning tea. We've got a big agenda today. So I'm going to ask that you park a little question for Stephen, because I don't think it's a fair one to. Right, if there's no further discussion, I'm going to ask for, we've got to move in a second to receive, so we did. So I'm going to put the motion, all those in favour?
Before you put the motion, can I just make a comment that there are inaccuracies in the report? I think they have been acknowledged, and I think they should be corrected before they're accepted.
I think that's a fair point. Yep. So can we'll put the motion subject to the revised details in the report being accepted as part of the report. Are we happy with that? Are you happy with that, Stephen? All right. Right. So subject to the revised information being accepted as part of the report, can I get all those in favour, please?
So can we just clarify exactly what is to be changed in the report?
So we had that.
Did you see that
sheet that was circulated? Was there something else, Councillor Grant, that you wanted?
Well, I believe that the first point under recovery activity to date is just not correct. Page 226. Getting recovery activity today. Destination Coromandel Thames Business Association, Mercury Business Association, etc. I do not believe that has actually taken place.
And I do a point of clarification here, so not working together, but our agency, Education Coromandel, have worked individually with those associations, they all work together. I think it's the language there.
Happy if that is just corrected.
All right, so do you want it noted, or do you want to make a correction to the report? Are we able to do that? I'm not sure that you can. You just want it noted.
Take the word together out, so they are working to plan.
I'm not sure that we have the capacity to go into the report and change it. Can I get some guidance on that, please?
Yes, very much. Yeah, I don't think. Well, but I understand the point that you're trying to make, so we can note that.
Yep.
That's what you would like it to say. So removing together out of that paragraph.
Yeah, was that your point?
So we could note that in the minutes, Councillor Grant. I think it's a fair point.
I just think we have tabling a report which has got inaccuracies in it.
I don't know if we have.
Yeah. To me, it appears to be a matter of interpretation and observation by yourself, John, and the organisation. I would not be happy to see it changed from the report, because that's the report we received. I think it's appropriate that your concerns get noted and dealt with in that way. That would be the only way I would see it done here.
So we can note those for the minutes. I don't think we can do anything further than that, because it's not our report to amend. But we can note that in the minutes. I think it's a fair comment. All right. So subject to that being noted in the minutes, I'd like to put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? So noted that Councillor Grant is voted against receiving the report. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Stephen. So the next item was on the schedule for Hall 19. It's an out-cycle funding request for the school events summary. We do have the team here to speak to that. Will we tackle this now or do it after morning tea? Everyone happy to have a crack at it now? Okay, thank you. I'll ask Ed and Bruce. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, John.
By way of introduction to this report, we've all been desperately awaiting the decision around the coming year and what financial assistance rate is going to be. I can tell you that there's about 4 councils around the country that were absolutely desperate for this announcement, and we got it at the weekend. The thing we were lucky enough to get was a letter 3 days before the weekend that gave us a heads up that that was going to be the announcement of the weekend. But what that did is it's allowed us to update our financials for tomorrow's annual plan. So that gets us links back to the annual plan discussion. And you will have got the agenda for that on Friday, and I can tell you that those calculations will be made right up to the minute somebody can't. And we've been really lucky in this instance that NZTA gave us that early warning, and again, it comes back to having a trusted environment.
Very positive for us. So we made those changes. Luckily, Donna helped me out. Donna was in the office and made a number of changes, and I was out of the office, so that was very good teamwork. So yes, that worked out really well. So that was one of the key points of this report was around the FAR rate of funding assistance rate that we get for Kotahi for next year. And so as you know, our normal rate is 51. You can go up 20 more than that, so up to 71 when you spend more than 10% of your operating budget in any given year on storm responses. And then obviously we've gone way over that. And so we've gone up to 91. So we've got the initial 91. We've secured that, as Amy mentioned, for next financial year for all the works, which is fantastic. And so now our challenge, and again, this links back to what Steve was saying around the way we're working with Kotahi around getting together and working in partnership with them to try to deliver things as quick as we can. You know, there's a real spectrum. There's a continuum there from the bare minimum we could do is make sure we're talking to them and not competing for the same contractors at the same time, you know, going out to the market with the same similar kind of work, but then contractors are going, okay, well, what do? I'll put in a good price for this one and I'll put in a big price for this one, so I can't really deliver it, right up to actually just working fully together with them. So that's where we're kind of aiming. We've got a meeting on Friday, progressing that, as Stephen alluded to and mentioned in his report. So that's really good. Again, coming back to this report, there might be some little small areas, additional commas and full stops missing and things like that because of the hectic nature of some of the changes we made. So yes, I just mentioned that. It's actually a fairly straightforward report, but obviously it's some big stuff because we've got big dollars in here, you know, around some critical infrastructure. To jump to what we're actually looking for from council this morning from the out of cycle is between $2.5 to $3 million worth of out of cycle money. That is our contribution towards the works as we see them at the moment. The other thing I'd mention is that obviously when you're doing these kind of pricing for any project, but particularly these kind of works, and it's not that long ago that all this damage happened. It's like a funnel, you know, where it's wide at the top, so the accuracy of the numbers can be quite varied initially when you put them together. And then the more you work through things, the more detailed investigations in this team of contractors and consultants do, the narrower and the more greater level of confidence you get as you get closer and closer. So we're kind of in the middle of this, you know, we're not right at the early stuff, which I think, you know, you had to put numbers together in the middle of the actual response in February. We're not at all the detailed work, but we're kind of in the middle. So we're getting a lot more comfortable with the numbers. So I just mentioned that. The other thing I'd say is that we've managed to progress this stuff very rapidly. I've been really impressed and really pleased, and I think a lot of that comes down to obviously hard work by Ed and the team, but principally around our relationship that we have with Pinnacles as our professional service provider and Ventura as our contractor. So they've been able to, all the connections they have within the industry around geotechnical engineers, surveyors, all those types of things, contractors, they've managed to grab those and parachute those in. And so we've actually managed to progress things really fast to get to this point where we're at today. So again, roading, from a perspective, roading and transportation is probably our highest priority because it's so critical, as we just talked about, for our district. And then we've got a whole lot of other things coming in behind it around parks and access ways to beaches and things like that. But obviously at this stage, not as critical as the transportation activity. So that's a bit of a long-winded ramble, but hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour and a bit of a picture. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, Bruce, yeah, it's good to see the report and see the numbers. You talk 28 and then you're pushing it out to $33 million. So that's sort of a rough number I know you're working on. Is this a locked-in period of time, obviously, to 2025? Is that right? It goes to 2 years?
So, I think what you mean. So the work program is they're talking as a 3-year work program. So the FAR is 1 year.
1 year.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm just trying to get my head around how do you find that priority? And will you bring another contract support Ventia to get this thing done in this timeframe?
Through the chair, definitely, yeah. So it's not, it wouldn't all be Ventia that would be delivering all of this work.
No, right.
We'd definitely be going out to the market. Again, because as Ali said, it's 2 year, kind of 2 year initial planning for this program, but we've got first year at that high FAR. Again, links back to Stephen's point about how we're working with Waikato to see if we could actually deliver all these things in 1 year.
Right. So this program you're putting together, is it your program or their program?
It's our program, but they've got their own program to work on the state highway. So they haven't got just 25A, they've got other work. So it's trying to bring those programs together and see what synergies we can get there if possible.
So it's your program on our roads?
Yeah, correct.
Right, okay. And they'll work with you on that in terms of getting contractors to help funding that. Is there enough technology with skill level with those contractors to do this work?
Yes.
There is.
So just to clarify, Bruce, before we've got Martin, and just to clarify, that 91% is for 1 year only. So we've got to basically just pull out this off and get that done in the 12 months period.
Correct. I mean, yes, through the chair, that's effectively it. We'll obviously be still working with Waikato to try and make sure that we can extend it if possible. But our real priority is to try and deliver everything as expeditiously as possible within that time. We're going to have
Thank you. So, Martin.
Yeah, so being mindful of only having that year until 30th of June 24, and anything after that would be possibly only co-funded at 71. How are you balancing the, build it back, just get it back to how it was with the other things that we're hearing around building it back better? Will we end up possibly settling for, which would be great, a whole lot of just putting it back how it was so that we can get the work done? So how realistic is the build it back better, that sort of time and money constraint?
Can I just respond to that before you guys? So question that I asked at the Regional Land Transport meeting yesterday was, we need to be very clear about the split between recovery funding and land transport funding. We don't have clarity on that yet. So some of the work that we have been funded for will come from recovery budgets direct from government into territorial authorities. Some of that will have to come through the regional land transport funding. We don't know what that split is, but we need to be working very hard. Stephen's doing the recovery side, but John and I at the Regional Land Transport Committee have to keep pushing as hard as we can for priority. And there is a bit of vagueness and a bit of a grey area. So Bruce and his team are going to be relying to some degree, and correct me if I'm wrong, on the decisions of the Regional Land Transport funding levels and priorities that we are part of as part of that committee.
I'll give you the answer and I'll go here over to Ed. I mean, from my position, initially, whenever you go in and do like a repair, you're actually going to end up with something that's better than what was there. So we're not in a situation where we've had a retaining wall that's failed, and then we go and put the same retaining wall back. What we've got sites which, generally aren't retained or anything. And so they've failed, and then we actually go in and construct something there, which is going to be way better than what was there. Basically nothing. So it's generally, whenever you do anything, we actually are getting a jump up anyway. And if you look around the district, with the exception of maybe Bluff Road, I would say we don't have sites where we've done work and then they fail. Bluffrake's a very different situation. You know, there was always a risk there, and we've tried a number of things there. But all our other areas where we've had to do retaining and stuff, and it'll pick under the table if we have. But I don't recall anything in my time where it's failed again in a subsequent storm. So yeah.
Yeah, basically, we will be building back better, as Bruce says, we will be improving from what was there. The improvements may not actually be visible, might be that the drainage is improved in the area, so that we can cater for more frequent storm events like this without further damage. But you also have to recognise the fact that in certain sites, in fact, the vast majority of those sites, we can't physically build back better. We have a road that is a certain width. And if we suddenly create a 2-lane highway there, we're basically wasting money. Take Port Charles Road, for example. The majority of that road is on a sealed single-lane track. We will improve that road in that location, but it's not a case that we will be building 2 lanes of sealed road.
Peter.
Yeah, so Bruce, we went out to our ratepayers consulting on the annual plan, and we signalled in that document that there were still unknown costs that were going to impact on the annual plan. So what we see here is this the end of it? So in terms of unknown costs that the ratepayer is going to need to bear in terms of the recovering from Cyclone Gabrielle, you know, are we up for, you know, some extra costs associated with park repairs or something?
So through the chair, we've actually tried to budget, you know, and so we've just done the March revision for our current year budget, so we did that in April. In that March revision, we've included costs for parks. Most of the park stuff is actually operational costs as opposed to CapEx costs. So there's always a chance there might be some still coming through, but the majority of those costs should actually already be covered under the existing budgets. If they're not spent this year in operational budgets, then they might come through next year. But basically, we're already kind of accounting for those in our open position for the annual plan. So we should be 29% fine.
If I could just ask a question through the chair.
If I could just end with it. Is it, and we have more of that discussion tomorrow, the annual plan discussion.
Okay.
Probably drive down to tomorrow, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to say a little bit, that this is roading, this is not beach erosion, this is not, you say parks are in there somewhere, but I don't quite know, understand how that works, but it's just roading?
Correct.
Roading, right.
Sorry, John, yep.
Gonna get very patient again.
Sorry.
Hey, listen, I know of argument, I see one of this, Stephen, and I think there's enough money involved that, my biggest concern is that we don't move fast enough, okay? I've got no problems with spending ratepayers' money when I'm getting a bloody good return at 91% is a bloody good return. I think it's important enough that I need to go A&E to really keep an eye on the contractors with you guys to make sure that we move really, really quickly on this, because a year is a short time. And yes, we may be able to negotiate the length, but that's not guaranteed. We've got 21% for 12 months, so we really need to move off our backsides as quick as possible. The only thing is, I'm just wondering if you've identified every site on the peninsula, because we had that Windy Point presentation this morning, which I was unaware of that road. I think Ed was unaware of that being in the state it's in. So we really need to make sure that we captured that. That's quite a strategic road for economic reasons. That's a really important road. Just hope we're capturing all the weak points on our network.
Yeah, so through the chair, I'd say yes, we have got them all captured. Again, after Windy Point, you know, we're aware that's a very tight kind of corner there.
Getting tighter because we've lost a bit of steel there, Bruce.
Yeah, it is getting tighter, but the team, the Pinnacles team, have been out on site. They've looked at a number of sites on that Takuma Road as part of the response immediately.
I had this conversation with he was not aware of that one, and neither was I. So That's the concern with me and Ed. Are we getting all the information and to make the right decisions on the spots to go to?
Yeah.
So I through the chair, each one of the sites we've got is an ongoing slip site. It may deteriorate further, and I think this is what's happened with Windy Point. We do our initial assessment, we prioritise the sites, we make our plans according to what we found. If the site then moves or collapses further, then we have to do a reassessment. I think this is what's occurred at Windy Point.
Anyway, I think it's
Thank you. So the resolutions in front of us, pretty much in the vein, to confirm Otaki funding assistance at 91%. To agree to fund the initial response in terms of the estate, we really obliged to do, and the last part of it is to agree to loan funds the portion of costs estimated as per the following table, which is sensible thing to do. I think the recommendation from staff, that's the way that we're going to smooth this through. Can I get a mover and a seconder to receive this?
I'll move.
John and Rebecca, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
All those against? Motion is carried. Thank you, team. All right, we're going to break for morning tea. And after that.
So what?